Let's talk a little bit about current wrestling, and then we'll move on. There's one more thing that's become a bit of a hot button issue in the last recent few days. Will Osprey was recognized by the Wrestling Observer as having, I think it's 4 5-star matches in the last month, and a Twitter account pointed that out. That by doing this in the last month, he's amassed more 5-star matches than John Cena, CM Punk, and Kurt Angle combined. And Kevin Nash, as Kevin Nash tends to do on his new great podcast, Click This.
How's his merchandise?
How's his merchandise sales? Which I appreciate that Kevin, as he always does, brings it right back to business.
Yeah.
And I think it does develop a debate amongst a lot of wrestling personalities. Would you rather be a critical success or a financial success? And those are two different goals. And I freestyled to Jeff Jarrett that perhaps, Will Osprey, his idea of what a wrestler is and his goals and aspirations were to be the best wrestler in the world. Mm-hmm. And perhaps he had a different set of goals or aspirations than Roman Reigns, and maybe neither would feel the same level of satisfaction if their roles were reversed.
Yeah.
And you were a guy who certainly was at the top of the mountain in WWE, but long before that, man, you were putting it all on the line when a lot of people, Arn Anderson included, as you say in your live show, really questioned, hey, what are you doing here? But you were critically acclaimed. And I wonder where you land on that. What's more important in your mind's eye? I know you don't speak for Will and you don't speak for Kevin, but you speak for Mick.
There was a great question. I was really glad to see the support of the Australian and New Zealand wrestlers from the independent community coming out. And I'll say the only interaction I've had with Will was when he got in touch with me based on a trip I was supposed to be taking 5 or 6 years ago to New Orleans, where Will and the promoter had some kind of falling out. And then the promoter took to like stopping in his car and cutting these long, crazy promos about Will, calling him a spot monkey.
Oh, wow.
So Will was saying that I needed to make it there, despite the misgivings he had about this guy. Like, I needed to go on this tour. And then the tour fell apart and the guy's no longer in business. So that's the only interactions I've had with Will, which were positive. He's phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
Right? It's incredible the stuff that he can do and makes it look effortless. And now he seems to be in a little social media war, Kenny Omega, which could yield incredible results. But I'm going to go back to the question the guy asked me, would I rather be part of a great match or a great storyline? And I said, I think to me, the great matches, they go hand in hand with the great storylines.
Right.
I needed the great storyline. I needed JR to call. I loved having JR call those matches to explain the story to the fans. And of course, he had that amazing job of just saying enough, but putting you in that, putting you in that space where you feel almost like you're in that wrestler's head. So I think the great moments are more important to me than great matches. And I think if you have great matches for too long, too regularly, people stop seeing them as a big deal. That Shawn Michaels excelled almost every night. Kurt Angle excelled almost every night. But if I had one knock on Kurt, throw that out there. Kurt was so great so regularly that people took it for granted.
Yes, I agree.
That he said it wasn't a big deal to see a great Kurt Angle match.
It was expected.
It was expected. So he was almost like a victim of his own greatness. Mm-hmm. And as crazy as it sounds, with the Olympic gold medalist pedigree, and I believe he won an Olympic gold medal. You'd have to ask Kurt. He was also so enjoyable and such a great comic foil that I don't know if everyone realized how outstanding he was. So I haven't watched enough of Will to know exactly what these 5-star matches were, but I would go back and I would have to challenge whether or not anybody has outdone Kurt Angle and what's the difference between a 4.5-star match and a 5-star match. But I'm not going to pretend that Will's not a phenomenal wrestler.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people, most quote unquote smart fans would think that Will Osprey is arguably the best wrestler in the world.
Yeah.
But I think maybe what gets lost a lot of times is the entire industry talks about 5-star matches, and I'm a 25-year subscriber to the Observer.
Yeah.
But even I know that's just Dave's opinion.
Yeah.
It's not an objective fact of who drew the most or who sold the most, or that's just a guy's opinion. And that's okay. I value Dave's opinion, or I wouldn't be a 25-year subscriber. But I think Kevin brought it back to, it's not just a critical art form, it's also the wrestling business.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to ask you, would you rather be, as Jay-Z, the rapper, would call it, underpaid or overrated?
I think I was both at once for a while. You know?
Absolutely, you were.
Yeah, I think I was overrated and underpaid.
Underrated. You were underrated.
I was underrated. I don't know. You know, I was underrated up to a point and underpaid. And then I don't think I was ever overpaid, but I do think that at a certain point, I had so much goodwill accrued that people were giving me a pass. Like here, for example, I hurt my back in 2006. It was pretty chronic for 10, 11 years until I had my hip replaced. And I kept getting injured when I would train hard for comeback matches. So like in the entirety of the time I was with TNA, I never actually made a comeback.
Right.
Someone missed a move and I hit a double arm DDT and I pulled out the sock because I just didn't have the gas in the tank. So, and I thought, given the circumstances, I did as well as I could while not being in the shape that, that I should have been. Maybe I was using the back as an excuse. I remember my daughter seeing me off when I went to the gym and I was back in like 42 minutes. And she said, "Oh, did you forget something?" And I was like, "No." And I said, "I finished the workout." And I didn't even have the guts to tell her I'd actually worked in a trip to the bank too. So the working out was a little briefer than it should have. But I do think I was probably overrated and simultaneously underpaid, if that's possible.
Sure.